in a book called The Explicit Body in Performance. Rebecca Schneider, who is a kind of performance studies theorist, theater theorist, she looks at a range of performance practices by mostly female artists, Annie Sprinkle, Linda Montano, quite a few others, and it talks about the fact that a lot of particularly female performance artists reveal their bodies or do something with their bodies, and which makes their performance explicit. I think there's a way in looking at, I think it's an interesting choice of title, I think, actually, Explicit Body in Performance. It seems to contain all of the, or at least most of the requisite ingredients for producing a little kind of knot within the schema of what knowledge is and what performance is and what the body is. Because in a sense, I think, the idea of performance pretty much describes what it is to make something explicit. And I'm reminded here of explicit's origin in Latin and also in Michael Polanyi's term, in which explicit, at least in Latin, explicare means to fold out or to roll out, which is why it was written at the end of manuscripts that one would unroll, indicating that the explicit is that which happens at the end of the action, the performance of unrolling a manuscript, but also it's also the end point in that sort of unrolling of knowledge, so that when you make something explicit, you unroll it out such that it finds a location at the end of that unrolling, that end location being the kind of site of knowledge. So in terms of that title, Explicit Body in Performance, explicit and performance are kind of synonymous in my thinking right now. That performance, the rendering of something into form, or from its sort of theatrical use, this kind of stepping out of the darkness, of the silence, of the tacit, into the light of this path that leads to the explicit moment, the moment of knowledge acquisition at the end. Those things are very similar, I think. So when the body, or something about the body, the knowledge of the body, the dark, silent knowledge of the body, which Polanyi calls tacit, when that is unfolded out into the light, it becomes explicit. And that unfolding, that stepping out into the light, corresponds to a moment of performance. Which I think also, just to expand it to other thinkers, is a good correlation with why Perkins chooses the term performative for a particular sort of knowledge that he places between proactive, which is dispositional, and something like tacit, and possessive, which is sort of like explicit, that performative moment, that performative potential, that performative way of knowing and being. It's that active stepping out into the light of the path which leads to the explicit, to the unfolded moment. I think it's also interesting, although possibly tangential, that in linguistics, the performative is a type of speech which usually lacks an object. It performs an action in the speech itself. So it contrasts with subject, predicate, object speech forms. So if I was to say, I throw a stick for my dog, I am the subject of the speech. The stick and the dog are the objects. And the rest of the sentence forms the predicate parts. But in some sentences, such as when I say, I promise, or I swear, or it's raining, there is no object at the terminus of that unfolded sentence. There's just the subject, and then there's this action, and that action is performative. It's entirely encapsulates that performance. It doesn't suggest an end point. It is the end point. The end point is this constant stepping into the light, and is this constant relationship to knowledge, in which one is active in Perkins' terms, and it is the performance part of Rebecca Schneider's Explicit Body. The body becomes explicit at the end of as a result of the performance. The performance itself is the stepping out of the tacit darkness. Something like that, anyway.